Hello my fellow artists, welcome to the Lulu Blue Studio. Today I'm going to guide you through the process of painting this watercolor flower painting, and in particular I will also explain you why I picked orange and purple. So we are going to talk just a little bit about color theory. Are you ready? Let's paint together. My name is Luisa and this is the Lulu Blue Studio. As I often like doing, I start to paint this watercolor flower piece from the main hero flower. And I paint in particular the center of this flower in yellow. I'm mixing a little bit of lemon yellow and yellow ochre. And using the tip of my Princeton brush in size 6, I start to add a few brush strokes in the center of this page. The size of this center of the flower will identify how big your main flower is going to be, so pay a little bit attention to that and don't worry too much though about the details. For the main flower, I've decided to take my flat brush and I'm using the orange color. This is a transparent orange because I really wanted to capture a sort of warm color palette for this overall flower composition. I picked orange, transparent orange, because this is a color that I like very much and I really like how all of its color values can identify different colors. In particular, I create a few brush strokes that are very concentrated in orange color, so there is a high concentration of pigment and just a little amount of water. But I also create a few petals, as you can see, that are much lighter in color, so there is just a little bit of pigment and a higher concentration of water. I'm adding a little bit of yellow ochre to blend into the wet petals of this main flower, and to create these petals I'm mainly using the side of this brush. I keep this color, this orange color, to start to create other flowers that connect to the main flower in the center. And therefore, speaking a little bit about composition, I decided to create these orange flowers that are not as big as the main flower in a sort of line that goes from the upper left corner of this page down to the right corner in the bottom of this page. At this point, I decided to start to create other filling flowers, and I could have had different color choices and I could have picked any color to create these other filling flowers. I picked a sort of blue type of violet, and in particular I wanted to spend a few moments here to speak a little bit about color theory, in the sense that we often hear that if we study color theory, we are told which colors are fitting well together and which colors we should use to create beautiful and engaging flower compositions. And I really believe this is true. What I wanted to underline with this video is that the color choices are still up to you, and you can keep in mind the color theory, but you can always deviate a little bit to make something that really fits your mood and what you actually want to create. In this case, the complementary color of orange is blue. So if you pick a color wheel, you will notice that the blue is a color that sits opposite the color orange. And therefore, following the rules of the color theory, I should have picked blue as a color to create my other flowers. I instead picked a type of violet. This is Cobalt Violet, and I picked this color because it has shades of blue, as you notice, but it is actually a sort of purple, so it is actually a different color on the color wheel that sits close to the blue, but it's actually moving towards the red color. So what I wanted to highlight in this short video is to actually, yes, follow the color theory rules. Have in mind these rules if you want to create something engaging, but remember that you can always shift towards the left or the right side of the color wheel, for example from the complementary colors, to create something that actually matches what your wishes are. And so with this in mind, I created these purple flowers. The pigment I'm using is Cobalt Violet, and I've always used this flat brush to create similar shapes, and I placed these 3 flowers across the page in a way that are sort of dancing with the orange flowers in the middle. And then I changed my brush and I took the round brush, the Heritage 4050 in size 6, so the same brush that I used to create the center of the orange flower, and I started to create these little small flowers that frame the orange flowers and the purple flowers I created in first place. As you can see, these small flowers are in mainly Scarlet Red with a touch of Cobalt Violet, so I'm trying to create a sort of connection between these small flowers and the main flowers, and I'm using the color as a sort of connection, so I am mixing a little bit of Cobalt Violet that is present in the main big purple flowers, and I'm creating these shapes, leaving the center white, and I will create the center in a second moment, and I'm just touching with the tip of this brush the page to create these little filling flowers. I suggest you not to be too afraid which shape these smaller flowers need to be. Just create some little small round shapes, leave some white space in the middle, and we will add the center of these flowers in a second moment. To create a little bit more connection, I then took a little bit of yellow ochre and I started to create similar small filling flowers but in yellow color. And I'm placing these yellow little flowers all around the orange flowers, and I thought these yellow ochre could be instead of a connection of these little flowers with the orange ones in the composition. So if we wanted to talk a little bit more about colors, I just want to remind you that you can create your flowers in any shape you prefer. And just remember that you can create a sort of connections between all of the flowers you're creating with the colors. You can, for example, think about complementary colors in the color wheel. That means colors that are sitting opposite to each other on the wheel. And you can either take exactly these colors, or you can shift a little bit left and right, or mix even the opposite color with other shades that you have on your color palette to create a new mixture for your flower compositions. So play a little bit and don't be afraid, don't think too much about the science of color theory, and just try to have fun. In this moment I'm using this round brush in size 6 and I'm adding a few green details that go through these little flowers, the small filling flowers, because I wanted to create a sort of stems that are connecting to the center orange flower. I basically want to give the impression that all of the filling flowers and the other purple flowers, but also the 2 smaller orange flowers, are sort of coming and being created from the bigger central orange flower, the hero flower. And at this point I switched brush and I took my flat brush and a very light mixture of Sap Green with a little bit of green earth to start to create the leaves. And to create these leaves I am adding a little bit of pressure onto the side of this flat brush. I really like to create these sort of leaves with the flat brush, and in general with practice I've noticed how each and every single brush can allow me to create different shapes for the leaves, of course also for the petals, but we are speaking about leaves in this moment, and therefore I've decided to use this flat brush to create the leaves of this piece. After having created, let's say, the base, the first layer of leaves with, as we said, Sap Green, a very light Sap Green, I'm now taking Cobalt Green Dark, which is a very dark sort of green towards the blue color, and I'm creating more leaves, additional leaves, in more or less the same places where I placed the very first layer of leaves, and I'm allowing some of this Cobalt Green Dark to blend into the Sap Green and onto the other green brush strokes that I've created. I really like to see this contrast between, for example, the lighter greens and the cobalt green dark. And I also think that the cobalt green dark, being a green that has a color tone towards the blue color, fits very well in this flower composition, because we have purple flowers that are main flowers with a violet, cobalt violet color that leads toward the blue, but also because, as we said, the blue is the opposite color of orange in the color wheel, and therefore I really think that it helps to connect all of these components in this composition. For the leaves, another trick that I like to use is to actually mix greens that I have available on my color palette, for example Sap Green, with the main colors of the flowers. For example, I could mix in this case a little bit of Sap Green with some transparent orange to create a duller sort of green to create my leaves. But in this case, I didn't want a composition too dark, so I went for the cobalt green dark. I mixed at this point a little bit of cobalt green dark with a little bit of cobalt violet, and I'm using now this very light mixture of green to create some little leaves around the flowers. And at this point I use the softest and thinnest brush I own, which is a silver black velvet brush in size 6, and just with the tip of this brush I started to create the center of these flowers, of all the flowers. For the purple flowers I've decided to use a quite cold sort of yellow, so I mix a little bit of lemon yellow with Azomethine green yellow. And I've decided to use this color mixture because it's a sort of yellow, and yellow, as we said, is the complementary color of purple. And I'm using the same mixture to create the center of all of the flowers that I have on the composition at the moment. With a little bit of Mars Black, I add some contrasting brush strokes in the middle of the flowers, a few touches with the tip of this brush, and I allow this Mars Black to just blend with the yellow that is still wet. If you like this video, and if in general you like tutorials on flower compositions, please press like down below, and if you want to support me with the creation of other videos like this one, please subscribe to this channel, because it really helps me to create some free content for you to watch. Thank you! Also, if you like to paint loose style flowers and you are a beginner and you would like to improve your technique, feel free to download the Beginner's Guide to Watercolor Flower Painting, which is an ebook of 18 pages that I wrote for you, and you can download by clicking on the link in the description below. We have almost reached the end of this tutorial, but I just wanted to add a few touches of green, dark green, and so I mix a little bit of Cobalt Violet, a little bit of Sap Green and a little bit of transparent orange to create a dark green for additional very small leaves. As you can notice, these are actually the colors that I use to create the main flowers, and therefore I add these colors to the green to create a darker sort of green. So, as I said before, I try to create a connection between all the elements of this flower composition through color. I'm pretty happy with the composition so far. I really like to add contrasting brush strokes towards the end because it really helps me to frame the main flowers. And at this point I've decided to switch again my brush and use the softest brush I own, the Silver Black Velvet, to start to create layers on the purple and orange flowers. I really like to use this brush to create layers because I think these layers are the softest and the more natural layers I can create. And so I use in this case some more concentrated Cobalt Violet to add layers on the purple flowers, and I'm gonna mix a little bit of transparent orange with a touch of yellow to create layers on the orange flowers. My recommendation here is to use similar colors to the base of your flowers, to the first layer of your flowers, if you want to create layers that are quite similar and to create flowers that are more similar to what you would find in nature. But you can also try and mix very different colors and add layers that have nothing to do with the colors that you used for the base of your flowers. Remember that based on the pressure that you add with your brush on the paper, you can obtain thicker or thinner layers on your flowers. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you have learned something from this tutorial. And if there is something in particular you would like me to explain you in a next video, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you painted along with me. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.